Well, as the coronavirus spreads to more countries, the CDC says there are now 60 cases or thereabouts in the U.S., but that may grow significantly higher. So how might an outbreak impact daily life and the U.S. economy? Joining us tonight, L.A. County Superintendent of Schools, Debra Duardo, and Moody's Chief Economist, Mark Zandy. Well, welcome to both of you. Superintendent Duardo, what would a closure of the L.A. County school system look like? How would you roll it out? And what would pupils and teachers do?
Well, that's what we're in the process of preparing for now. We still believe that L.A. County is low risk. We've only had one case of a person identified with the coronavirus. So right now we're taking the necessary precautions in the event that we would need to close down a school. So part of that means that we are preparing for online learning, providing instructional packets to students, thinking about independent studying, doing everything that we can to prevent the disruption of instruction.
So, number one, the news here is that you're thinking about it and game playing out what it would look like. But number two is the idea that just because school would not be in session, learning would not necessarily come to a halt.
Absolutely. Learning can take place in any environment. We'd prefer to have it take place at school, but if need be, we'd make sure that our students would still continue to learn.
Mark, if schools closed in large districts like Los Angeles or potentially across the country in many markets, what would it look like economically? What kinds of businesses would be affected most?
Well, it would be highly disruptive. You know, there's 30 million American families with children. Let's say, it's just a scenario, a third of those schools with those kids that shut down. That would be about 10 million families affected. And let's just say, you know, 10% of those families had a parent that couldn't go to work because they had to stay home with their kids. That's a million people that can't go to work. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of income. And that doesn't count the other parents who probably have to get home sooner and because they can't work as long as they have to come and relieve their caregiver. So it would be, I think, incredibly disruptive. And then, of course, you have to ask yourself the question, well, if we're shutting down a lot of schools, what else is not working? You know, what's going wrong here? Because that's a pretty drastic step. So I think in that kind of a scenario, it would be pretty tough on this economy. It feels like we'd be in recession.
Debra, forgive me for spending another moment or so with Mark. As you do your modeling now of the U.S. economy, the global economy, and most pointedly the Chinese economy, how are you revising your GDP outlooks?
Significantly lower. You know, even before we thought this virus could jump to be a global pandemic and reach the United States, we had cut GDP growth for the first quarter down to about 1%. So just for context, the U.S. economy has been growing about 2% per annum pretty consistently throughout this expansion. So that's about half that. And at that rate of growth, if you know you're there for very long at all, job growth will be affected and unemployment will start to rise. But now with the virus, you know, given what the CDC says, the probability of this coming here in a significant way and, you know, disrupting things, the school closure is an example, I think this is very serious. And this is what the markets are telling us, right? Global investors are starting to discount the real possibility that we will have an economic recession.
Right.
And one other thing I'll say is, you know, we came into this very weak. I mean, the global economy was, you know, really flat on its back. That trade war did a lot of damage. And, you know, Europe was pretty close to recession. Italy was, you know, arguably already in recession before the virus hit. So, you know, it's going to do damage.
Debra, let me turn back to you for a moment. Just for the record, how many students are in the school system that you supervise?
1.5 million students, K through 12.
And you can imagine if those kids are not in school during the day. What are you hearing from parents and teachers? What kinds of concerns? What are they asking you about this?
Parents and teachers just want information. They want the facts. They want to make sure that we are thinking about and preparing for in the event of schools need to close. But they also want to make sure that we're taking other precautions as far as teaching children to make sure that they're practicing good hygiene at school, that they're washing their hands for at least 20 seconds, that our countertops and doorknobs and desks are being disinfected and cleaned. They also want to make sure that their children aren't going to be stigmatized for certain areas of our county, in particular some of our Asian students. We want to make sure that our schools are safe, healthy learning environments, that we will not tolerate any bullying or teasing in our communities. So those are some of the concerns, but primarily they want the facts. They want to be reassured that we're providing them with accurate information. We've assured them that we have frequent communication with the Department of Public Health, that we are working with all 80 of our districts, that we're planning just as we should for any type of emergency, that families should have plenty of water and food and medications, the same thing we would in the event of an earthquake or a fire or other thing that would cause children to not be able to come to school.